Hello there, folks. Rishi Sunak was interviewed on Laura Kuenssberg's Sunday morning BBC show, and it really was 20 minutes of my life I will never get back. Sunak is a master of repetition, and I'd advise anybody wanting to hear what the Prime Minister has to say to avoid this one completely, or risk ruining a lovely Sunday. On the panel was Ben Elton, and he was not impressed with the performance of the Prime Minister, to say the very least. And he laid into the hapless Sunak in his typically inimitable style, and let's take a look at it.
Well, let's see what my team at the table have to say about that. Now, I have to say, Ben, you were looking distinctly unimpressed throughout that interview. Fair to say, I think you've never been a fan of the Conservatives, but what did you think of what Mr Sunak said?
It's not so much depressed as sad. I mean, if anybody was still watching after that extraordinary Orwellian, meaningless, evasive word salad, I mean, everybody else wanted to believe, and I sort of believe maybe he's kind of a bit more decent, you know, and it turns out he's as much of a mendacious, narcissistic sociopath as his previous boss. I mean, this man literally, he seems to be making a principle of the fact that he resigned from a government that he'd served loyally and tried to keep propped up for numerous years. He's trying to boast about having worried about inflation while he was Chancellor of the Exchequer under Johnson. He seems to act as being born into Downing Street 6 months ago was a miracle birth. No, he was a part of a 13-year cycle which has got us to this point. He talks about other countries having the same problems. He doesn't admit what he well knows, which is that they're all doing better under them. The evasion, the constant repetition of a repaired street. I genuinely wanted to believe that maybe the Tories had made a reset, even though they had elected a man who had loyally served under Johnson, a man who made a mockery of a parliamentary democracy and clearly was venally motivated by self-interest. The fact that the Tories chose that easy option, for a man now to say, we don't take easy options, when they took the easy option, which was Johnson, because they thought it would keep them in power, and when they thought for a moment he wouldn't, they dumped him instantly. I mean, he's the Prime Minister. He owes us honesty, and we got nothing but mendacity, evasion, and vanity. Just dripping with vanity.
Now, of course, Ben Elton is absolutely correct, and I should probably just show you an example of this repetition he speaks of. Don't worry, it will be only about a minute long, so it shouldn't ruin your day too much. Kuenssberg asked Sunak about the unfolding situation in Russia. Now, this should be an open goal for any Conservative Prime Minister when they're talking about war. Bread and butter Tory voters love a strong-sounding leader during a time of crisis. The Patriots love it. The War Hawks love it. They just love strong answers in these situations. And I appreciate it's difficult to say too much about it because it's an unfolding situation. But this is just prime Sunak in robot mode. 3 separate questions he's asked. And just listen to the same answer given every time.
Prime Minister, what's happening in Russia is clearly very significant. Do you think this might be a coup against Vladimir Putin?
Well, we've been monitoring for a while now the potentially destabilising impacts of Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. We're keeping a close eye on the situation as it's evolving on the ground as we speak. We're in touch with our allies, and in fact, I'll be speaking to some of them later today. But the most important thing I'd say is for all parties to be responsible and to protect civilians, and that's about as much as I can say at this moment.
The Ministry of Defence, though, has said online this morning this is the most significant threat to the Russian state in recent times. Is that right? How do you see it?
As I said, we've been monitoring for a while the potential of Russia's illegal invasion in Ukraine to be destabilising, and that's obviously you've seen the situation as it's developing. We're keeping a close eye on that. We're in touch with our allies as the situation evolves. I'll be speaking to some of them later today, and the most important thing is for all parties to behave responsibly and to protect civilian lives.
When people look at this, I mean, is it good news or bad news that Vladimir Putin's been challenged?
Again, it's an evolving situation. And I think the right thing at this juncture is for us to make sure that we're on top of it, that we're in touch with our allies, which we are, and I'll be speaking to them later today, and that we call on all parties to exercise responsibility and to protect civilian lives. I think that's the most important thing for us in the UK to be doing at this juncture.
It begs the question, does it not? Just who the hell does Rishi Sunak appeal to? He's got more traditional Conservatives thinking he's more of a liberal. When the issue of war comes up, he gives a robotic, repetitive response. A fixed penalty notice for his role in Partygate. The 5 pledges, he's not met any of them. So far. Not likely to either. This political party, the Conservative Party, especially if Nigel Farage opts to return to politics before the next general election, as a leader of goodness knows which party, possibly Reform, but Richard Tice would have to stand aside. I cannot for the life of me see the Conservative Party escaping the next general election with more than 150 seats. And I think even that could be overdoing it by a very long way. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again soon.